And so here we have songs that people sent in.
Beautiful handwriting.
Beautiful handwriting. I mean, it's great to look at the letters because, first of all, you realize how poor basically everyone was. They're writing to the YIVO, the YIVO Central Committee there, and they're asking, okay, I've collected the folklore. Could you at least send me some stamps? And the way they reuse paper on both sides, I mean, there's not a, there's no space left on the paper because it cost money. And they didn't get paid, so at least send me something to send it to you for. So that's pretty sad in itself. But the YIVO in Vilna was swamped with all this folklore material, songs, proverbs, stories. And then someone had to go through it and edit it. YIVO had sent out questionnaires about what to collect and how to collect. We have here in 1928, Ethnographische Enquetes, a collection. But before this was put into a booklet, I believe, each month they sent out on a different topic. Purim, obviously the festivals are a subject. What did the groggers look like, etc. Sort of guides for the Zamlers, because the Zamlers were looking for guidance. And so that, they knew what to collect, or they were being guided what to collect. And in the other publication, Was ist also ins Jiddische Ethnographie? What is this thing called Jewish ethnography, is the way I would translate it. A handbook for the collector. Also, very interesting document explaining what folklore is, what ethnography is. But the Ethnographic Commission collected what they called zababonis, like old wives' remedies, I'd say. Again, the editors of that pamphlet saw that particularly paralleled like older primitive superstitions, right? When I teach folklore, I don't use the word superstition. I use the word belief. As they say, one person's superstition is another person's religion. So we avoid that word superstition, but they were particularly interested in that. And they make interesting comments like, well, the Jews don't excel in material culture. Like, we don't have a Jewish architecture. Things which are debatable whether that's true or not. In the small town life, Jews were restricted into, like, if you had artistic talent, if you could paint or write, draw or be an artist. If you were an artist, what would you do in the shtetl? What could you do? Any answers to that question? What did Jews with artistic talent do in the shtetl?
Thinking of all the sort of Judaica you see in museums, or built a synagogue, or something like that.
Or something practical like woodworking, chairs.
Furniture making. But
or
also
become a tailor. No?
Well, but let's think in terms of painting. I mean, there were sign painters. There were scribes, right?
Oh.
I mean, the scribe, there were gravestone, matzevish, legers, people who made the gravestones. I mean, until the modern era, that's where the artist in the shtetl used his talent, or her talent. Metalwork would have been, metalwork also. But they had their priorities over what should be collected and what not. Certainly YIVO, because it was the emphasis on Yiddish, emphasized language and de-emphasized material culture. That was a whole other thing.
In this regard, I would ask about the parallels or overlapping of questionnaires, for example, linguistic research or dialectological research and ethnographical research. What's your experience maybe?
YIVO also sent out dialectical, for language, but you didn't have the response that you did for the folklore. Many fewer people answered that. It was already considered more of a scholarly endeavor to even understand that. But included in the materials were language, observations, dialectical proverbs, expressions. Of all the genres that YIVO collected, I think proverbs was the most. Obviously, that's an easier one to collect.
The questionnaires are from 1928 and the handbook is from 1931. So do you think that that's for some reason that they felt like the Zamlers needed better training?
Since I read a lot of the letters going back and forth, I can tell you that YIVO was broke. It took a long time for any publication to come out. And they relied on money, there was no great benefactor, and so it took a long time for things to come out. They already started the 1938 book in 1928. They had all the material. Partially, Khan is is guilty because he just took so long to edit it. But these things took a long time before the war. The desire to publish it was there much earlier. And there were, Chaim Chayes, who was one of on the folklore committee, was giving seminars, teaching Zamlis what to collect. There were other ways of spreading the news on what to collect.
Who's sending in these fragments, and who are they coming from, and who are they asking? So you said he went to some young women, but mostly who's sending in these written documents?
But your question actually triggered something else in my mind, which I should mention, that when they were doing these expeditions, they were looked upon as madmen. Like, why do you want to know a proverb? Why do you want to know a song? Well, there's a couple of Russian ethnographers, Sokolov, who are pretty well known, who were arrested for asking ethnographic questions. Someone like Shmuel Lehman would go among the criminals collecting, thief songs, and he writes about the experiences of almost, being bashed in the head because he was recording songs from the wife of a thief, who found him alone with his wife recording this song. I mean, the people didn't understand that whole idea of recording songs. What good was it? There was always this slight, and so when you get an equivalent in American folklore too, like going into the Appalachian Mountains and hunting ballads, there was sort of the danger element of it. Folklorists, ethnographers, they always had that finding these gems, like being hunters and finding these treasures. But the treasures they were looking for were Yiddish songs, and the singers were women. So it was strange for men to interview women. I mean, in a traditional shtetl, that would have been bizarre. The best memoirs I saw was Pinchas Graubart. I don't know, I forget how he made his money, but he was a man of means, and he paid the people who sang for him. So he entered the shtetl, and word got out that he's paying people to sing. So as he describes it, suddenly the whole shtetl started to sing. Like he would walk by a window and the woman would start to sing, and like wherever he went, people thought, and then he had a room in the tavern, so people started to visit him and sing for him. It was something new. They didn't know, what to expect. I mean, what a folklorist was.